Lucky for us that Russia sucks, because otherwise, with the concern that the empire is giving towards the Intermarium, and quite frankly with the concern that the Intermarium nations are having for each other, that would have been pretty terrible. Let's explore. Hello everyone and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Just a quick video here as I'm preparing to leave Bulgaria. It's more or less a preamble of a much more structured and nuanced video that I'm preparing about the information war. Essentially, the empire as it stands right now is doing a terrible job at it, and the only reason that's not visible widely is because the enemy, Russia in this case, is even worse at this task. But you know, if you're gonna have an information war slightly later on with the CCP, then maybe the empire should up its game. Yeah, sure, this lousy performance is good enough when facing Russia, but may not be good enough when facing the CCP. But beyond the tactic of the empire, I'm also quite astonished of just how little the press in the Intermarium, and that's the reason I'm making this video in English. I'm hoping my Polish and Hungarian friends will also watch it and consider doing something about it. Did you know that Russia has staged multiple explosions in Bulgaria over the last 3 years or so? You didn't know, because the Berlin-controlled media, which always supports Russia, never reported it, and sometimes even the Bulgarian media didn't report all of it, but most of it was reported by the Bulgarian media, but it was never discussed in the rest of the countries of the Intermarium. I haven't seen it in the Hungarian media, I haven't seen it in the Romanian media. I don't think it was reported thoroughly in the Polish media either. You know, the business of the 3Cs initiative / Intermarium is also greater connectivity, and we're doing a terrible job in the media sector. We still have too much media that is either outright owned by either Berlin or straight up foreign agents like Intrmarium, which is a Swiss group, so you know, a non-EU corporation, or it is heavily influenced by Berlin. I'm thinking here of G4 Media, for instance, in Romania, or as we call it, Germany for media, because that's really what it is. So you know, most of these things you cannot find out about them unless you come over here, especially considering that in Bulgaria, as opposed to other places, the media is still very much traditional, like with very heavy thick newspapers, and you know, newspapers are actually a thing. Sure, some of them are also available online, but not always, and sometimes, especially their investigations, are available online, like the first third, and the rest of it, well, you're invited to the newspaper store and buy the newspapers and read the rest of it, which, by the way, is actually a very good idea, and it's a testament of the huge mistake that other societies, Romania, have committed by switching entirely to online, which also means that the editors and the trendsetters and the agenda setters get to edit history, essentially. Not to mention that if you're looking for a piece of news from 2013 or you know, something a little bit older, well, oops, the archive got resetted, so there's no way to find it. But you know, print stays, so there's that. By the time you'll be seeing this video, the elections will have taken place in Bulgaria. So I don't know the results. I'm taping 3 days before the election. That's one of the reasons I hopped by Bulgaria for a little bit. And but it doesn't matter who wins or if someone wins. There's going to be another government, of course, following the election. Whether that government will be stable enough or not, that remains to be seen. The safest bet is that it will not be stable. Remember, this is the 5th round of election in of parliamentary elections in under 2 years in Bulgaria. So it's a very complicated business. And one of the reasons it is a very complicated business is because this society, the Bulgarian society, is, I don't want to use the verb transitioning because nowadays it can imply something else, but it is in transition from a heavily Russophile, or at the very least Russia indifferent society, to a society that is much more aware of the Russian problem. Of course, the terrorist attacks orchestrated by Russia on the territory of Bulgaria definitely didn't help in preserving the Bulgarian society's fondness of Russia. It also didn't help that after the war started, the more Russophilic political parties, and no, I'm not talking here about the far-right Vazajhdanie, but more of the very mainstream and much larger quote-unquote center-left BSP, or the Socialist Party, who essentially tried to block any initiative that would have, at the end of the day, fulfilled Bulgaria's obligations under NATO, and maybe even Европейский Союз, although with the Европейский Союз it is a separate issue here, and here it is still regarded as a separate issue, just like everywhere else in the Intermarium. And the reason I'm saying that the empire is doing a terrible job, and not just the empire is doing a terrible job, but even the countries of the Intermarium themselves are doing a terrible job in relation to each other, is because the, what do you call them, Atlanticist parties essentially here are more or less left to fend for themselves. So, when the Russian propaganda says, well, America is an imperialist power, and well, not really. In fact, if anything, I would say it's not being imperialistic enough. Here, the Russophiles are in a full offensive, and not just Russophiles. I mean, this is really scary in a way. So here you have the Chinese ambassador. Again, this is the newspaper 24 Часа from today, March the 30th, 2023. And the Chinese ambassador, in the most important featured article in the middle of the newspaper, comes in and says, democracy is a societal value for the whole of mankind. And that's what the headline says. So, essentially, China is pulling, well, I guess dipping its toes for now in the information war in the Bulgarian space, because, well, the CCP has noticed that Russia is losing ground here. So why not try to take it over yourself? And to be fair, I have yet to find, maybe there is somewhere, and I haven't bought all of the newspapers over the last month, so maybe there is some answer to that, but I have yet to find thorough rebuttal to the coughing in ideograms that is going on here. Now, of course, I can't say coughing in Cyrillic because Bulgaria is the, well, it's the origin of the Cyrillic alphabet, but so yeah, the empire is just not doing a good job at all. 24 Часа is allegedly pro-Western Atlanticist newspaper, and yet here you go, the Chinese propaganda in full swing, and without any caveats, without any asterisks, without any anything really to say, look, you are now entering propaganda territory, essentially. Because that's what communist regimes usually do, and it's not just China. Russia used to do that too, especially in the times of the Soviet Union. They still do that today, although today it's more brazen, easier to identify. But in the past, especially in the 70s and 80s, they used to be pretty good at placing their propaganda in various foreign newspapers without being detected, and then those positions would be published as a random opinion from the editor or an analysis from a very credible source, and then that analysis would then start changing minds, and countering that this piece of disinformation was sometimes very difficult. Sometimes it was easy because sometimes it was just straight up lies, but oftentimes it wasn't. It was pretty advanced. Same thing here, right? When you will come in Bulgaria and say, look, maybe Chinese influence is not great and whatnot, they'll say, well, come on, they're promoting democracy. They also believe in democracy as a fundamental value for all of mankind. So yeah, there's that. Now, admittedly, nearby in Montenegro, there is the best example one can get about what happens when you get in bed with the CCP. The country is nearly, the country of Montenegro is nearly bankrupt as a result of the of unfriendly business with the CCP. So there's that. And that, as I was saying, the Atlanticist parties here are left to fend for themselves. Here's a tabloid, is very well read in Bulgaria. It's also slightly more expensive, but it's considered the newspaper for the liberal left, I guess. So the headline is Petkov, that would be the former Prime Minister Dmitry Petkov, has prepared the Ukraine coalition. And it basically says that if they win, they'll be more transparent and more helpful towards Kiev. And then in more political articles, page 19, will there be a surprise at the election? The silent clash in the media space, and then an American witch hunt. Then further on, again in the middle of the newspaper, just a random story. I mean, very, it just so happens, a story about music contraband from the USSR and how a Bulgarian musician ended up famous in the USSR via contraband and whatnot. And this particular article with the USSR in title it is written from a very fond perspective, almost as if the author is nostalgic for the USSR, and probably he is. If you watch my older video, Understanding the Soviet Nostalgia or the Commie Nostalgia Phenomenon, there's plenty of those people in Bulgaria, not just on the streets, but also as editors of newspapers. And the reason I'm showing you all of this is because the media in the Intermarium in Romania, Poland, Bulgaria, Hungary, Czechia, why not? Okay, Serbia is still not convinced that wants to join our club, but whatever. But the countries that are in the club, they don't discussing anything. None of this is being discussed. In fact, I was checking out what's the latest discussion about in the media of, well, my home country, in Romania, which is just across the Danube. And the main topic is some low-tier 10 people protests about some BS law that may or may not change the way corruption is being prosecuted. Who cares? Meanwhile, there's geopolitically relevant elections taking place here, and there's also a farmers' protest that is randomly blocking border crossings between Romania and Bulgaria, affecting commerce quite seriously. Now, of course, I wasn't affected by it because I traveled by train, but if you're to travel by car between Romania and Bulgaria, get ready for shenanigans. It can be pretty tiresome, and you may end up waiting 8 hours just to cross. I'm serious. It's a clusterfuck, essentially. In any event, these things are happening right now this week, and will probably happen after the election as well. Even the fact that there is an election this weekend in Bulgaria is just not present in the media of surrounding countries. The Greek media, again, is very unconcerned about these things. But think about it. What if the Russophiles win? Now, I don't think they will win. I think It's going to be another gridlocked parliament, and probably the Russophile parties, particularly BSP, will lose further ground, not necessarily because of their Russophilia, but also because of their terrible economics. But nevertheless, it is a geopolitically relevant event, and also the commerce being blocked is crippling for the Bulgarian economy, which is already suffering quite severely because of the fact that the local currency is entirely pegged to the euro. So no, it's already a tense situation, and the media is nowhere to be found. And again, I'm not expecting the Washington Compost to write about this, or the Pravda on Hudson. I mean, I don't think the staffers from the New York Times even know where Bulgaria is on the map. But I kind of do expect the rest of the Intermarium media to write about this, and they don't. And that, quite frankly, is terrifying. So yeah, I don't know who's gonna win the election. The latest poll available as of the moment of this recording says that it's going to be essentially a tie between the Progressive Coalition. The Progressive Coalition is We Continue the Change and Democratic Bulgaria, and then the other, about 26%, the coalition, and the other force that will also get around 26-27% is GERB. So GERB, the former Prime Minister Boyko Borisov's party, is slowly climbing back to political relevance. So, these two together will probably be good enough for the geopolitical interests of the Intermarium, but they will not be good enough for governing Bulgaria. So it's probably going to be another deadlocked government and a deadlocked parliament. And 6 months from now, there's going to be another round of elections. But nevertheless, this situation cannot go on forever. And one of the reasons it's being perpetuated and has been perpetuated over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, is because we didn't help. And by we, I mean those of us in the rest of the Three Seas initiative. We just consider Bulgaria to be there. But think about it, what if the Russophiles win? And if that were to happen, that's going to be a huge gap in the Three Seas initiative project, and that can be a problem. Meanwhile, everyone pretends to be concerned about Hungary, but Hungary is not a Russophile place. The population is not Russophile, the government is not Russophile. I know that the Европейский Союз tells you that, but that's just not true. The highest amount of Russophiles is here, and finally the non-Russophile story is winning, but we're not helping it. So I guess if the Atlanticist message wins without any help, that would be a good testament that, look, it was indeed a fully organic choice. But if it doesn't, then it's a problem for everyone, including for the people living here. I guess my biggest complaint is that we should have more connections between each other in the Intermarium area press outlets. There has to be more coverage of each other's countries and be more aware of what happens in our neighborhood. I still think it is a huge tragedy that the protests in France get more coverage in the Romanian or Hungarian or Polish media than what happens here in Bulgaria, where things actually matter, and if things go wrongly, there's going to be a negative effect for the rest of the countries of the Three Seas initiative as well. So no, don't discount Bulgaria is what I'm saying. All right, that will be enough. I'll get back to with more about this on a more structured video once I get back home on the information war and how the empire is conducting it. But until then, thanks a lot for watching. See you all soon. Send me to the killing fields. Cheers.